As Yuri's new journey began, a cold wind whistled over a tranquil, snow-covered village. To truly understand how we got here, a man in a spiky jacket once asked if others had heard recent whispers, and he stated that a crazy lunatic was causing chaos on the battlefield, and the man looked surprised, wanting to know more about this lunatic. The man in a jacket elaborated that the mercenary's eyes showed no attachment to life, as he emphasized that the mercenary would vanish without a trace after battles, only to reappear at another war. A man in a vest clinked his tankard, finding the idea of a mercenary without a will to live quite unusual. The man in a jacket dramatically revealed the lunatic's chilling phrase, questioning if someone had survived once more, as the lunatic became especially fierce whenever the Empire was involved. The man in a jacket passionately finished his chilling tale about the storm-like fighter driven by a personal grudge, causing the man in a vest to shiver and ask for the lunatic's name. However, he thought that rumors said the chaotic fighter was once a prince from a fallen kingdom. Across the desolate snow, he thought the mercenary endlessly wandered, searching for his own demise. In this desolate, snowy forest, he found an injured Yuri slumped against rocks, with blood staining the snow between them. The unknown man glowing red visor showed their intense focus as they wondered if the chaotic fighter only found self-destruction. As snow fell on the wear, he confirmed in his mind that this was Yuri Betrayal, the third prince of Betrayal. His thoughts dwelled on the name, Yuri Betrayal. In his thoughts, he continued to consider the prince, disgraced for bringing ruin to his own kingdom with his own hands. 10 years ago, in a bustling casino, people lay defeated on the floor as onlookers whispered, and the prince was known as a traitor, the only one who survived his kingdom's downfall. Now 18 years old, Yuri stood triumphant with a confident grin, enjoying his overwhelming luck as casino chips exploded around him. Distraught, Royal Mage Hernando couldn't comprehend how he consistently won, especially by such close calls. Reclining casually at the table, Yuri continued to claim his endless winning streak was just simple good fortune, further frustrating the other players around him. As Yuri started to leave, an unseen player insisted they play another round. As Yuri continued his winning streak, he confidently offered to double the game's stakes. As the game continued, Hernando, covering his mouth, quietly suggested it was time for them to leave for an appointment. Suddenly, an unseen individual angrily confronted Yuri, demanding to know if he thought he could simply walk away after scamming everyone. The frustrated blonde pauldron man angrily accused Yuri of using cheap tricks to win all their money. Yuri aggressively leaned over the table, angrily demanding to know if they knew who he was after being accused of using cheap tricks. Amidst the rising tension, Stern Vest Man stated that his tantrum proved he was no noble, and the dark-collared man then questioned if Yuri was royalty, leading Stern Vest Man to declare they wouldn't let a prince leave so easily. Surging with intense rage, Yuri defiantly declared they shouldn't stir up unnecessary tension with the Empire, as he raged that all royals were useless and entitled. Then Yuri furiously launched sharp cards through the air. The three men then stared in wide-eyed shock, blurting out their disbelief at what had just happened. Yuri then brutally crushed something under his boot, angrily telling the group to listen, calling them trash, and formally announcing he was Yuri Betrayal, the third prince of Betrayal. As he continued his speech, emphasizing what would happen today, and they were overwhelmed by alarm and fear. Amidst the panicked shriek, Yuri ominously grinned, promising to remake them by his own hands. The three men screamed in extreme agony as the violent impact struck. The brutal impact then sent blood violently splattering. Far from the casino's chaos, a dark, mystical place appeared under a crescent moon. Leaving the casino's chaos, a hidden speaker in the mystical darkness earnestly insisted they were being truthful. In a grand hallway, Yuri questioned Ekaterina about her lateness, wondering why his messenger hadn't informed her of her father's emergency meeting, which she claimed was her reason, as he firmly urged her to just let it go. And Ekaterina quietly processed the prince's chilling words. Amidst the ongoing chaos, the imperial princess of the empire, Ekaterina Iwarna Granzayan, appeared with a serious and stern expression. Ekaterina angrily questioned if he was the only one making time, stating how difficult it was for him to get there. Yuri insisted that while he understood their side, they should also try to see him, as he explained that with his father gone, he now had to be very cautious. As the imperial princess looked down, Yuri gently touched his head, and he admitted he was about to share a secret. After her confession, Ekaterina reacted with hurt and sarcasm, wondering if she was now just another person to him. Startled and upset, Yuri quickly insisted that he hadn't intended her words in that way. She challenged why he was given an item if no one trusted her. Distressed and shocked, Ekaterina now grasped her arm as the glowing blue amulet lay discarded on the dimly lit ground. With a determined and sad look, Ekaterina firmly stated that no one should make contact until she made the first move, and Yuri reacted with urgency, quickly calling for a moment to pause. Ekaterina started to walk away, arching her entrance, and he called out to Ekaterina. Holding the glowing blue amulet, Yuri was lost in thought, wondering what to do next. An unknown man stood in an entryway, Yuri realizing how difficult escaping this situation would be. Then, a shadowy figure with ominous glowing white eyes and an unsettling grin suddenly appeared. That day marked a turning point. The unstable balance between Betrayal and the Empire finally reached its limit. The precarious balance of power still swayed the Empire's small provocations, now swiftly turned into an uncontrollable conflict. And so, the conflict between the two nations exploded beyond all control. Yuri's eyes widened in shock, reacting to the alarming pronouncement of an invasion. As the cataclysmic inferno engulfed the city, Yuri declared the Empire had invaded Betrayal. Yuri urgently commanded everyone to evacuate as panic filled the crumbling, debris-strewn streets. He ordered everyone near the palace to evacuate immediately. Yuri silently watched the colossal palace engulfed in the raging inferno, and the escalating conflict against the Empire finally ignited into a full-scale war. The uncontrollable conflict continued to rip through the city with devastating impacts, and the war dragged on for countless years, claiming many lives. As the chaos settled, autumn leaves drifted under a cloudy sky. The devastating war continued without any end in sight. A defeated Joshua lay on the desolate ground, as Yuri desperately called out his name. A soldier desperately urged Yuri to retreat from the perilous battlefield, insisting they had to get him to safety and angrily demanding to know why reinforcements still hadn't arrived. Betrayal commanded a formidable military force, renowned as the mightiest across the entire continent. As the war raged on, Fiore Betrayal's powerful new leader, but this endless struggle was due to the absence of one crucial person. But now the war's momentum drastically shifted, favoring the Empire. At first, he dismissed the war's twists as mere coincidences. Standing on the blood-splattered ground with a blood-stained sword, Yuri finally accepted the brutal truth he had long tried to avoid, a realization confirmed by countless battles. The brutal truth brought forth a memory of Ekaterina's serene smile, a poignant reminder of his deep betrayal. Yuri was watching a hawk in the bright sky, then realized his father's disappearance had perfectly coincided with the Empire's invasion. A bandaged messenger pigeon then landed on Yuri's arm, bringing the crucial response he had feared. After receiving the message, Yuri's eyes showed deep shock and despair. His gloved hands clutched the crumpled note, revealing its devastating apology. In the end, it truly was only despair. On a burning battlefield, the Prince of Betrayal fiercely fought, his enemies hoping his death would bring Betrayal's collapse. And he thought this relentless fight would never truly cease. The despair continued as Yuri swiftly parried a powerful sword strike. But away from the Grand Hall, Yuri again lunged with a powerful strike, which his opponent deflected. His opponent unleashed a powerful counterattack, sending Yuri to be surprised. Then, Grimacing Knight slammed his large sword down, clashing fiercely with Yuri's defense. The forceful counterattack sliced through the air. But Yuri managed to counter his attack violently, causing him to be pushed back by a forceful strike, crying out in pain. Bruised and battered, Yuri stood firm, clutching his glowing sword, ready to continue the fight. But then, another batch of soldiers had arrived, causing Yuri's attention to turn around. As the war raged, Grim Stubble Knights led his armored men aggressively through the dark. His wide, distressed eyes now reflected his stark terror. His feet faltered on the cracked ground, making him wonder if this was truly his end. Then another knight swung his sword, attacking Yuri. Disoriented and stumbling in the fiery chaos, Yuri desperately tried to brace for the next swift impact. A grinning smug pauldron man then brutally struck the Loran, sending him reeling back with a bloody slash. Yuri looked on with horrified, wide eyes at the brutal consequences of the attack. As smug pauldron man stood dominantly with a cruel smirk, Yuri desperately cried out his name. Critically wounded and collapsing to his knees, Loran desperately begged for his highness to survive, as smug pauldron man loomed over him. Wounded and overwhelmed, Yuri screamed out Lawrence's name. Just as another attack approached, a knight fiercely defended him, parrying an unseen attacker's strike as sparks and flames exploded from the clash. Knight urgently supported the heavily wounded Yuri, telling him he must escape for Bryal's future, as he desperately urged him to escape. As the desperate escape continued, unseen commanders loudly announced the Prince of Bryal was fleeing and demanded his capture. The chaotic escape left a blurred, streaking aftermath. Yet, his desperate flight led him to a tranquil, sun-dappled forest, a stark contrast to the battle. Gray-Green Knight commanded his armored guards to search thoroughly, convinced the prince remained close. The Prince of Bryal now hid behind a large wooden crate, escaping his pursuers. After hiding behind the crate, Yuri decided he could no longer stay hidden and needed to make his next move. Yuri grimly knew they needed to break through the encirclement to survive and regroup. He then took a moment for troubled, silent reflection. He wondered about his father's fate, dreading that his continued absence meant the end. The distressed Yuri realized their empire must have fallen. His gleaming armor illuminated, Grim Stubble Knight stood resolute, clutching his sword for a tragic last stand. Silver Knight stood calmly over the defeated Yuri, who desperately protested his fate as he knew Bryal's future hinged on his survival. With a distressed expression, Yuri desperately pleaded for someone to rescue him. Yuri continued to desperately believe that if he fell, no resistance would be left. Kneeling in despair, Yuri was tormented by the memory of the knights who had sacrificed everything for him. Gripping his gauntlet, Yuri could only desperately plead. He then clearly voiced his deep regret. The Silver Knight vowed that the Empire would pay for its actions. Yuri, somber and sweating, sensed the enemy soldiers were close to arriving, and the knight told him to go. Following the urgent command, Yuri frantically fled through the dense, dark forest. Yuri gritted his teeth, internally vowing to survive and rebuild his fallen kingdom. He realized his noble ideals had simply been naive, youthful dreams. Yet, the world's harsh truth was utterly unforgiving. A somber, rain-filled sky now loomed over the desolate reality. Amidst the grim reality, he reflected on how everyone had perished, somberly contemplating all the blood and lives that had been lost. Yuri expressed a deep sense of futility, unable to recall the original reason for any of it. Then he realized he had only been swinging his sword to punish himself. Yuri silently held on to the desperate hope that someone would finally appear someday, and his ultimate, desperate thought was for someone to finally end his life. He truly longed for death, actively seeking a final resting place. Wounded and exhausted, Yuri looked up into the falling snow, having found the place he sought to die. The Red Knight noted his constant self-sacrifice, always charging into the most dangerous battles for peace, as he asked if self-destruction was the only answer he found, and he labeled Yuri as selfish. The Red Knight then declared that even death would be too merciful for Yuri and commanded him to die, and identifying him as Yuri Bryal, the third Prince of Bryal. With a fierce, enraged expression, Yuri grimly believed everyone aware of his past was already dead. The Red Knight then declared that Yuri was responsible for everything. After the powerful impact, the scarred, the Red Knight stood defiantly amidst the fiery backdrop, declaring everything was Yuri's fault. As the powerful impact struck, Yuri looked up, distraught, wondering about Laurent. Yuri, distraught, confirmed the familiar voice belonged to someone he was certain had died, baffling him. As the knight gripped his gleaming sword, he thought of how the Empire's deceit had ruined Bryal and shattered his spirit. The name of Yuri Bryal then echoed with powerful emphasis. After declaring his name, Yuri, now a vengeful ghost, charged relentlessly through the desolate snow, past a defeated foe. The prince, who should have died, returned like a vengeful ghost, believing he had come to demand atonement for long-standing sins. Yet as a blade brutally pierced his chest, he cried out, wondering why death brought no lightness. As his pendant glowed, his pained expression showed that the cursed guilt still tormented him. The ornate blue pendant pulsated, a symbol of the profound guilt still weighing heavily on his shattered spirit. Even as his life ended, he knew the heavy weight of guilt still clung to him, and yet, the bloodline of Bryal would never abandon its honor. His shattered mind now displayed only disturbing, glitched fragments. His commitment was unwavering, even if it led to his ultimate death. Yuri's thoughts echoed his name from the darkness. Suddenly, someone urgently cried out Yuri Bryal's name. Plagued by guilt, Yuri's terror-filled eyes shot open, sweat beading on his face. Still burdened by his guilt, Yuri abruptly jolted awake in bed. His pupil contracted as he slowly processed his surroundings, stating that he had been unconscious for 3 days. After Laced Collar Man finally opened his eyes, he, with concern, asked if he was all right. Newly awakened Yuri sat up and asked if it was his father. A distressing realization then dawned upon him. His father was dead and pleading for his darkest suspicion not to be true. As his father watched, Yuri, believing he was in hell, sharply asked his father if he had also ended up there. Yuri gently clasped his bare hands, offering a tender gesture of comfort. Fiore, appearing more serious, remarked on Yuri's wild life for someone who spoke so much of honor, while he, smiling gently and holding his hand, recalled a hazy memory. Fiore then aggressively backhanded the stunned Yuri, demanding to know what nonsense he was spouting. Though he now had a bump, Yuri defied his scolding about his bad habits, demanding repentance. Biting into the green leaf with an intense expression, Yuri urgently warned them to act while they still had the chance. With a sharp sound, the young prince sat up, clutching his hands, his face still showing surprise as the officer watched him. After his defiant warning, Yuri intently focused, thinking of nothing. A powerful, splashing force then erupted, filling the room as Yuri lay in bed. Despite the room filling with a powerful splashing force, maids diligently worked in a pristine courtyard with a glistening fountain. Yuri continued to think about nothing. He then deeply considered that there were no sinners or fires of purgatory, as he wished for a demon to appear and torment him. Disoriented by the bright light, Yuri wondered where he was as Ruffled Cravat Man gently asked if he was awake. The intense light caused the surrounding figures to gasp and blur with profound disorientation. After the intense light, Fiore urgently called out to the unconscious Yuri, who lay surrounded by concerned individuals. As his name was urgently called, Yuri had lost his consciousness. A grand, shimmering cosmos with distant stars and nebulae unfolded, leaving Yuri convinced it was only a dream. The radiant blue hourglass flowed with bright sand, making Yuri wonder if his whole life was passing by. Despite Yuri's efforts, the golden hourglass violently shifted, its rapidly falling sand splattered with red. He couldn't wake up, and the world hadn't ended. Instead of the world ending, old, forgotten events began to unfold once more. Yuri, grimly seated at the lavish dining table, understood he had no choice but to accept the unfolding situation. As he thoughtfully held his spoon, he looked with wide eyes and understood he had returned to the past. This beautiful, cherry blossom-adorned castle marked his return to the spring of his 13th year, and this was the second chance he had been granted. The maid pulled back the heavy curtains, filling the room with bright morning light. As the maid continued to open the opulent curtains, announcing it was time for His Highness to wake up. Still groaning from under his covers, Yuri heard her firmly remind him that he had asked to be woken. The explicit mention of sword practice made his eyes suddenly jolt open in surprise. Yuri abruptly sat up with a sharp gasp, resigned to the training that awaited him. Yuri sat up in bed, disoriented and frantic, urging for his clothes but quickly realizing he needed to wash up first. As Yuri stepped out of bed, the maid urged him to calm down. Braided maid woman named Aina continued to help Yuri, offering to wash his face and inviting him to sit. Instead, a dark, blood-soaked room appeared in his mind, observing the deceased, a bloodied maid. In the dimly lit, blood-splattered room, her lifeless body lay slumped next to a piece of furniture. A slight frown creased Yuri's face as he remained lost in thought. He then clearly spoke her name. Snapping back to reality, Yuri sat up as Aina responded to His Highness. Yuri then unexpectedly requested that he be slapped. He firmly reiterated his demand for 3 stinging slaps. Visibly shocked, Aina, hands clasped, questioned if he was ordering her to commit treason, but he dismissed the idea of treason, firmly stating his orders made it impossible. Still unsure, Aina asked if he was truly certain about his strange request, and Yuri then firmly confirmed his certainty. Identifying himself as Yuri Betrayal, as he declared he always kept his word, and a confident, cunning smile subtly spread across Yuri's face. The magnificent castle of Betrayal stood majestically under a bright, clear sky. His new training began with a sharp strike against a wooden scarecrow. The forceful impact was then followed by a sharp sound. Yuri winced in pain, a red mark on his cheek from the clash of wooden staffs, as he forgot that Aina had impressive strength. Meanwhile, his brothers watched something off-panel from a grand staircase, both smiling as he was teasing them, and he continued to lament that no one offered to help treat his injury. The training continued as two wooden swords dramatically clashed. Finishing his reflections, Yuri felt disappointed that Bernard never inquired about his cheek. Bernard, the confident Mandarin swordsman, was Yuri's swordsmanship teacher. Yuri parried another attack, frustrated that his teacher only sparred with him and didn't correct his form. As Bernard aggressively attacked, Yuri wondered when he had started teaching by sparring. From a grand, arched window, Bernard sadly considered Yuri's immense natural talent, finding it a true waste. Bernard, with a pensive expression, reflected that Yuri could be a true blessing to Betrayal if he were more diligent. As Bernard left through the doorway into a bright hallway, Yuri watched with a somber expression. Yuri then intensely realized it began right after he had made that comment. He recalled that his persistent refusal to cooperate caused Bernard to stop teaching and just spar with him. He internally confessed that the pressure only made him want to slack off even more. Bernard maintained his stern, focused expression as Yuri directly called out to him. Even as Yuri's internal battle raged, a grim reminder of the world's dangers, he dramatically declared his new resolve, demanding the best training. Now that everything would begin, Yuri, stern and determined, brandished his blade, poised for immediate action. Yuri then confidently declared to Bernard that he would now be completely serious, and Bernard responded with silence. With a confident smile, Bernard wondered what had gotten into Yuri. With a confident smile, Yuri then declared that everything would truly begin from this moment. Bernard now gripped his powerful blade, ready for the intense training to begin. With a focused eye, Bernard declared it was time for the real training. The immense impact of Bernard's sword pushed Yuri back, making him cry out for his teacher to hold his attack. A sudden, powerful impact caused him to show intense terror. Bernard's powerful, swift sword swing landed with a sharp impact. With a slight smirk, Yuri suddenly understood the situation after the powerful impact. Bernard's blade then sliced through the dark, starry void, leaving a brilliant light trail. As the intense training progressed, Bernard stood powerfully, radiating immense magic from his dark sword, and in his determined face reflected his immense concentration as powerful magic swirled. His rigorous training occurred before his journey to Brill. Bernard continued to strain, letting out a sound of effort as he struggled to control the sword's immense power. Such fierce power revealed Bernard as the sword demon. Yuri's sword fell on the ground. The exhausted Yuri, lost in thought, fully grasped his mentor's demanding training. His face drenched in sweat, the utterly exhausted Yuri lay defeated on the tiled floor, his wooden sword discarded, as Bernard calmly observed his student's exhaustion, and Yuri internally admitted his past mercenary experience was the only way he survived the brutal training. Exhausted from the brutal training, Yuri raised his scarred hand toward the sky, knowing he still had to press on. Yuri then wondered if he would indeed improve quickly at this pace. Still holding his sword, Bernard couldn't help but wonder how the prince had matured so much and dealt with everything. Lying on the ground, an exhausted and slightly injured Yuri looked up in surprise as someone urgently called out to him, addressing him as His Highness. With an urgent, worried expression, Aina leaned into the doorway, insisting that His Highness hurry. Aina then confirmed to the surprised and anxious that His Majesty was looking for him, and Yuri reacted with surprised concern, asking why His Majesty needed him. Yuri's face grew grim with realization as a voice announced Count Johannes and his son had arrived, and his jaw tightened as he thought about who Count Johannes's son was. Yuri's dark thoughts focused on the one who betrayed the kingdom and opened its gates for the empire in his past. With a stern face and a subtle smirk, Yuri revealed the betrayer's name, Goth Barkvar, his thoughts surging with rage as he cursed him. Then Aina looked up expectantly and responded to the unseen speaker. Amidst intense, streaking light, Yuri urgently questioned where that particular individual was. Amidst the palace's formal setting, a lavish meal of steak and salad was now served. The formal meal began as Yuri and his brothers sat at the grand table. As the third prince meticulously cut his steak, Count Johannes observed him, stating how much he had changed. Beaming, he continued to praise Yuri's greatly improved physique as Fiore listened intently with subtle concern. A subtle sound accompanied Fiore as he wondered if his son had eaten something amiss, and Count Johannes chuckled and asked to share a bite with his son as well. Count Johannes then challenged Goth's insinuation about his smarts as Goth quietly cut his food. Count Johannes humbly admitted he still had many shortcomings. At the same table, Bowtie Glass's man ate with quiet satisfaction as Goth watched him with a flustered gaze. Still glaring intensely, Yuri's displeased aura made Goth visibly flinch and sweat nervously. Amidst the tense meal, Goth's distressed face showed a bead of sweat and a worried, downward gaze. But then Yuri's brother reached out and called out to Yuri. Leaning in with a probing expression, he pressed Yuri for details about what had transpired between him and Goth. Focused and aggrieved, Yuri confirmed Goth had betrayed him. His brother leaned back, then challenged Yuri's apparent willingness to simply accept such a treacherous act. Yuri then responded to the challenge with a subtle, cunning smirk and thought that on the outside, he pretends to be dignified, rolling his eyes around like that, and his behavior is the same then and now. Meanwhile, Goth got annoyed as well. Following his declaration, Goth face silently pondered his strategy. Yuri then closed his eyes, dismissing the idea while planning to manage his temper. As he recalled, the flames now engulfed the grand castle gate, a devastating display he dedicated to Goth, and he resolved that this life would be completely changed from his last. The tranquil garden stirred Yuri's memories of easily defeating Goth in their one-sided fight, making him wonder if an old grudge had driven the country's betrayal. Goth looked surprised as Yuri questioned his sword skills. Gripping his staff, Goth cautiously began to explain his limited skill and question the sudden inquiry, but Yuri angrily cut him off. Yuri stated that the kingdom does not need narrow-minded knights, which confused Goth, and explained that he wasn't an official knight yet. But Yuri confidently held his wooden stick, and he questioned Goth's destiny to become a knight for the kingdom. Goth, still holding his wooden stick, then hesitantly acknowledged the truth of Yuri's words, but had a clear reservation. Yuri, holding his wooden stick, then energetically challenged Goth to a duel. Yuri then lunged aggressively with his stick, catching Goth off guard as he tried to block the powerful strike. Recoiling in anger, Goth called the surprise attack a cowardly act. Undeterred, Yuri continued his determined sprint, ready to land another forceful blow with his wooden stick. Yuri's stick struck Goth's face, making him cry out in pain. Goth, clutching his injured eye and face, pleaded with the third prince to uphold chivalry. After his plea, Yuri's wooden stick slipped from his grasp. Goth was stunned and couldn't believe Goth had even dropped his stick. Ignoring the plea for chivalry, Yuri aggressively lunged forward with a smug smile. Yuri's powerful midair kick sent Goth sprawling onto the ground, his wooden stick now lying discarded. Yuri's attack sent Goth flailing to the ground, making him cry out in pain. After knocking Goth down, Yuri firmly took control of the discarded wooden stick. Standing victoriously over the defeated Goth, Yuri called his name as Goth on the ground, wondering about his father's respected title, a reputation he had once sold to the Empire. Yuri, still holding the stick, seriously questioned Goth about its true purpose. Gripping his staff, Yuri paused, recognizing that Goth had not wanted to live the way he did, as he extended his hand further, asking Goth if his question about their current life in Betrayal was too hard. And Goth agreed and stated that he didn't understand what he meant. Adopting a stern gaze, Yuri mimicked a hesitant reply, then firmly stated he would ensure no knight, including himself, held such weak thoughts. As Yuri stated, he would ask again with renewed intensity as he demanded to know why his father was a count and who gave him that power. Clasping Goth's hands, Yuri urged him to always seek the core of any situation, stressing the seriousness of his instruction and urging him to carefully heed his words. Goth then quietly affirmed his acceptance. As Yuri's future began to unfold, Goth walked away from the grand building. His brother then reacted with surprise and curiosity, asking if he was truly that skilled at combat, and Yuri challenged him, asking if he truly thought he would lose. Yuri then angrily asked his brother what he truly thought of him. But his brother then declared was the kingdom's biggest troublemaker and gambler, playfully depicting his mischievous past. With a stern expression, Yuri directly called out to his brother, warning him to stop causing trouble. This caused his brother to be surprised. Bathed in sunlight, Yuri looked up with a gentle smile, wondering if he had truly gone crazy. A vibrant sunset cast golden light across the grand castle walls. As the sun set, Yuri, gripping his wooden sword, was utterly relieved that the intense training was finally finished. Completely spent from his rigorous training, Yuri sighed in exhaustion as Bernard informed him that the day's hard work was finished. Still on the ground, Yuri looked up with surprise and concern as Bernard addressed him once more. With a knowing look, Bernard leaned down and told him it was time to learn the mana method. Astonished, Yuri sat up and asked if the officer would already teach him his mana method, but Bernard refused, stating it wasn't good enough for him. Bernard then suggested a new Brilliwan method. Then Yuri asked why, and Bernard explained the Brilliwan method as an excellent technique with pure energy and outstanding efficiency. Gripping his wooden practice sword, Yuri realized he had already mastered the Brilliwan method in his past life, recalling how he had honed it to a decent level as a mercenary, yet he still pondered. As Yuri sat deep in thought, Bernard, seeing his silent contemplation, asked if something else was on his mind, and Yuri confirmed he was still processing his thoughts. Yuri's eye widened as a new idea suddenly struck him. With a new idea, Yuri then sat up and told Bernard to find a Royal Guard member with great natural ability, caring more about potential than current skill, and he remembered one more powerful skill he had never touched in his past life. Bernard thoughtfully considered the prince's aptitude. Bernard then silently considered the best candidates, and with a decisive expression, declared Jared possessed exceptional aptitude. Sitting on the ground, Yuri looked up at the dark tunic swordsman, questioning if this was the candidate chosen solely for his aptitude. Yuri, looking troubled, now quietly considered Jared's name. He thought back to meeting Jared at the very end of the war. This realization pulled Yuri back into a stark memory of war. On the chaotic, flaming battlefield, his own skills were still just average. On the desolate, blood-splattered ground, it was surprising the chosen candidate had even survived, being among the hopelessly unskilled. Amidst the burning ruins, Gerard dejectedly found the aftermath of battle incredibly frustrating. He realized his own excellent potential had gone unhoned and wished he could return to the past to train relentlessly. And when the war came, Yuri leaned against his sword amidst the smoldering ruins, telling them to stop their nonsense. And they had both become thoroughly rusted swords. Yuri lightly patted his midsection, declaring it was time to move on. Following the grim realization, he continued to casually pat his midsection. He suggested they go visit their unskilled knight. Yuri purposefully strode towards Jared, who stood ready with his sword, and he decided it was time to confront that person and straighten them out. Yuri headed towards the grand, dark castle, bathed in the dramatic sunset. As he arrived, a door creaked open, revealing a thoughtful soldier in the arched doorway. Yuri smiled brightly, raising his hand to greet an unexpected highness, eagerly asking what brought them there, and Yuri explained he was there to see how things were progressing. The soldier replied that everyone was doing their best, despite their shortcomings, and Yuri was still processing his words. As he watched, Yuri confirmed everyone was indeed very motivated, even as they continued their energetic sword sparring. Then he asked where Jared was, and the soldier leaned in to ask if that was indeed the recruit, and he pointed him out. Yuri and the soldier continued to observe the intense duel from the railing, as he uttered a soft sound of understanding. Watching the intense training, he suddenly realized Bernard's true intention, that its purpose was to push one's limits. With a grimace, Yuri contemplated how the warrior had grown so rusty by merely doing enough to get by. Yuri, eager to join the training, commanded him to bring him a wooden sword so he could spar with himself, and the soldier asked who he would be sparring against. Yuri pointed to a lazy soldier training below, choosing him as his sparring partner. In the grand hall, Yuri and Jared stood ready with wooden swords, watched by other trainees. With a wide smile, the two soldiers enthusiastically urged Jared to give his all and stay sharp. As the duel began, Jared stood ready, holding his wooden sword, and Yuri acknowledged his impressive talent. Yuri pressed his challenge, demanding that Jared show his true knightly spirit. A bead of sweat formed on Jared's nervous, apprehensive face. Even he was still hesitant, but then he voiced his acceptance. With a final word, a boot sharply stepped down, signaling the start of their challenge. With the challenge now begun, Yuri powerfully lunged forward, warning Jared not to disappoint him. Jared stood firm, his gaze fixed on Yuri as the duel began. As the duel began, Yuri relentlessly attacked, and Jared skillfully parried the powerful strike. As the intense duel continued, Jared's swift, clean maneuvers drew praise from observers who also encouraged Yuri as he defended himself. An observer praised the prince's skill as they cheered for Yuri. But Jared focused intently, sensing something was amiss. Even as Jared fiercely attacked, Yuri calmly parried his blade with a powerful clang. Jared grimaced with determination, intensely focusing on the fierce sword clash. Jared, straining with effort, unleashed another fierce strike, creating a burst of sparks upon impact. As the intense sword fight briefly paused, Jared realized his opponent's movements were too consistent. After his observation, Yuri stood poised and confident, gripping his glowing sword with calculated control. He immediately reevaluated the battle, focusing on his opponent's adapting strategy. Yuri then realized his opponent was adjusting to his speed. Yuri then asked his struggling opponent if he was having fun. After realizing his complete control over the performance, Yuri decided it was time to fight properly. With his new resolve, Yuri relentlessly attacked, forcing Jared to parry with a powerful clang as he gained the clear advantage. As Jared recoiled in pain and shock from the relentless attack, Yuri subtly smiled and asked what was wrong. Yuri then lunged with a powerful strike, and he noticed Jared's expected beast-like reflexes as he braced for the blow. Jared unleashed a powerful, sweeping attack, forcing Yuri to desperately parry the formidable blow. Jared, with a focused and impatient look, lunged forward with a rapid and forceful attack, declaring he had intended to go easy. Gritting his teeth and sweating, Yuri struggled to block the powerful blow, admitting it was no use. Despite being a fully trained knight, Yuri realized that enhanced abilities, thanks to his memories, made his own efforts pointless. Though Yuri believed he couldn't win against him, the outcome of their duel remained uncertain. Even though his defense was failing, Yuri's determined eye showed he would persevere. Jared's wide eyes showed the shock from the powerful strike. After Jared's moment of shock, Yuri unleashed a powerful sword slash, making Jared quickly raise his weapon to defend. Yuri continued his intense combat, determined to finally land a hit. Yuri continued his dynamic assault with a wide sword arc. Yuri, holding his sword, grinned widely, pleased that the intense duel was now much more exciting. Yuri landed a hit, surprising Dark High Collar Man, while Epaulette Man praised His Highness's amazing move. Yuri, gripping his wooden sword, then directly questioned Jared if he was letting him win, and he firmly denied that he was letting Yuri win. But Jared's expression quickly shifted to deep concern as he realized something was wrong with the match. Jared stomped his foot, realizing he felt cornered despite being on the offensive. Yuri grimaced with intense effort as he unleashed a powerful attack. Yuri's powerful strike just missed, as he realized how close it was. After the intense confrontation, Jared found the whole situation truly exasperating. Finding the situation exasperating, Jared now stood ready, holding a sword surging with newfound power. From behind a barrier, they reeled back in shock, shouting Jared's name and asking if he had lost his mind. The shock continued as the Red Pendant Knight cried out, confirming that a mana sword was now being used. Jared then aggressively unleashed a powerful slash with his mana sword. The powerful strike released a wave of force. Jared, surrounded by the intense energy, watched with awe and concern, reminding them they were fighting the third prince. His eyes narrowed with intense focus, urging himself to regain control. As the formidable mana sword struck, dark hair fell to the tiled floor. Dazed and surprised, the man cried out as someone urgently called for His Highness. Jared cried out, eyes wide, as he recoiled in pain. As the soldier exclaimed in alarm at Jared, he worriedly asked if he was all right. Yuri confidently brushed off the injury, questioning him if he was new to sparring, as he was worried about him. Then he did with a decisive, determined expression and ordered him to pick up his sword. Yuri lunged with his mana sword, declaring there was no reason to stop, forcing Jared to block the powerful slash and stumble backward desperately. Yuri's dark-booted foot firmly stomped down, bringing renewed power to his relentless attack. With a confident smirk, Yuri relentlessly delivered another forceful strike, yet Jared skillfully parried it with both hands, causing a blinding flash and confirming his superior skill. His relentless assault continued with intense speed. Amidst his intense assault, Yuri reflected that this prince was truly unlike him. Jared grimaced intensely as the rapid attack slashed past him, pushing him to his absolute physical limits. As Yuri, pushing past all limits, unleashed a powerful and aggressive attack with a fierce grin, Jared bravely parried Yuri's intense attack, creating a violent clash of sparks. Yuri ferociously lunged with his glowing weapon, aiming a devastating blow at Jared. Yuri's fierce attack overwhelmed Jared, pushing him past his breaking point. Back then, in the Grand Hall, Yuri aggressively lunged at him, who stood ready for an intense sword fight. With sweat beading and his brow furrowed, Jared gripped his sword, feeling his blood boil with surging power. As Jared furiously charged at Yuri, he realized this fight felt unlike any spar, even against stronger opponents. While Jared charged forward, Yuri launched a strong sword slash. As Jared watched, he pondered this young prince. Even as Jared charged, Yuri looked up with resolve, extending his arm to prepare a new attack. Jared's face showed his growing inner struggle, realizing Yuri was truly awakening something inside him. Yuri's powerful sword strike drove him to recoil defensively before he let out a furious shout of pure frustration. Even as Jared shouted in frustration, Yuri desperately held his large blade, bracing against a powerful, harsh impact, forcing Yuri to struggle and block the blow. Right after Jared's furious shout, Yuri's powerful strike shattered his defense with a mighty crash. As the chaos continued, Jared launched a powerful sword strike, forcing Yuri to defend and scattering debris. With the intense defense over, Yuri, tired and bruised, breathed out a soft sigh of relief. Yuri then declared the conflict was finished as he smiled with confidence. Jared, filled with new resolve, gripped his sword, looking up with a shocked but determined expression, certain the fight was far from over. After their fierce encounter, Yuri told Jared that he had learned something from him. Yuri's dirty, trembling hands reached forward, showing his deep exhaustion. Jared shook his hand, thanking him for his hard work. Jared silently acknowledged the powerful determination and intensity from Yuri that he had never known. As he pondered the immense strength of someone so young, Yuri looked puzzled, still trying to understand Jared's strange reaction. With an exasperated look, Yuri directly asked Jared what he was doing. As he looked up, he asked for a clearer explanation of his demand. With growing bewilderment, brown-strapped swordsman again pressed to know why Ribbon Tunic Man was still holding his hand. He urgently demanded to know why no one was helping the prince, who was bleeding from his head and reacting to the scolding. Jared quickly backed away, expressing his apologies as he watched on. Yuri lay sprawled on the tiled floor with his sword nearby, letting out a pained groan. He was paused about something. Meanwhile, the onlookers on a balcony celebrated Your Highness' amazing feat. Sane stood composed on the balcony, and the knight turned to acknowledge him with a brief sound. To his surprise, he asked when he had arrived, and Sane confirmed it was only moments ago. Still on the grand tiled floor, Yuri lay defeated, his weapon shattered beside him. Sane, the captain of the Betrayal Royal Guard, stood thoughtfully with his gloved hand resting on his chin. A few days passed after the fight. From this grand and majestic palace, Yuri's daring plan to raid the Founder's dungeon was now set in motion. With the raid declared, Jared walked through a beautiful garden, clearly heading towards a new task. Jared looked surprised as someone asked if his duties were finished. Inside the grand palace, Yuri the Third Prince leaned against a pillar with a subtle smirk as he formally recognized him. As his daring plan began, Yuri hummed thoughtfully. Broadly smiling, Yuri told him that they had somewhere to be, but the swordsman, looking reluctant, insisted he still needed to train. Yuri confidently declared his change of heart was his doing and demanded a favor in return. Jared, with a thoughtful expression, acknowledged he understood. Yuri subtly smirked, signaling his agreement. After making his demand, Yuri then watched something unseen with a confident, smug smile as he decided that even with some imperfections, the current situation was good enough. So, Yuri led him through an ornate hall, Jared looking hesitant, wondering where they were headed, and Yuri, turning his head, told him to follow without making a sound. With his brows furrowed, Jared expressed his worry about potential danger, but Yuri's expression then softened into a confident smile, reassuring him that he was bringing backup. Jared looked startled as he demanded to know who he meant. With a sudden shout, Yuri called out his name. The royal mage of Betrayal, Hernando, looked back with a hint of surprise as Yuri called out to him. As Hernando calmly inquired, Yuri stated their destination and requested assistance for their journey. Hernando nervously tried to decline, citing urgent business, but Yuri's unwavering and slightly disapproving stare silenced his excuse. Yuri then confidently offered to clear his gambling debt, leaving him in wide-eyed shock. Hernando looked up, surprised, questioning if such a grand offer could truly be real. With a confident smile, Yuri confirmed that his promise was true, that he would erase all his previous gambling losses for him. While Hernando looked down in thought, Yuri asked if he had ever lied, but then he only considered Yuri's truthfulness outside the gambling den. Yuri kept his confident grin, even as Hernando loudly declared a definitive no. With a mischievous look, Hernando clarified that he had only ever seen him at the gambling den, and still distressed, he then fully questioned if his worth truly amounted to so little. Yuri confidently led the way, telling him that his debt was cleared and to simply follow. Hernand, with a smug smile, then accepted the terms and held up the official document, saying it was time to formalize their agreement. Yuri, still troubled, looked down, wondering if the third prince's name held so little worth. Overwhelmed, Yuri clutched his head in distress as Hernando and Jared watched. Yuri ordered Jared to vouch for him, startling him into confusion. With a determined expression, Yuri emphatically gestured, demanding him to confirm his statements as Yuri Betrayal, which Jared understood. With an awkward chuckle, Hernando, showing his light-hearted demeanor, prepared the group to depart, asking the prince if they were ready to leave. Still pondering, Hernando questioned their destination, as they had a knight and a mage with them. Outdoors, Yuri revealed they were going to Sword Mountain, startling them. With a knowing smirk, Yuri confirmed a new era was beginning. Asserting his leadership, Yuri resolutely announced they would raid the founder's dungeon.